Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show, wanted to let you know something that we're going to start doing specifically with the podcast. As you know, once we go live on air at KDKR, the radio show is formatted into a podcast, and we not only we give you a couple of different ways to listen to it. You can listen to it live, you can listen to it online, or you can listen to it at podcasts. There's a lot of people listening to it on podcasts. And wanted to make sure that you were aware of something we're going to start doing today. And I'm going to attempt to do this every day. And I may miss a couple of days along the road, but we're going to attempt to do it anyway, is add an introduction to this show that gives you a little bit of background information that I can't talk about on the radio. You know, KDKR is a nonprofit Christian radio station. We have to follow nonprofit laws, and that means there's certain things we can and can't do when it comes to the giving information and how we go about that process. So what I wanted to do was give you, like I said, a brief synopsis of what I'm talking about today and talk about anything I can't really say on the radio. So we've been talking about credit cards and the fact that interest rates are out of control. They're at an all-time average high of roughly 20% to 24%, depending on who you follow. And we've got to start rethinking the way we use credit cards. And what I mean by that is we've got to stop adding to those balances, get those balances paid off, and use it as a transaction card when there's so many wonderful things that come as a benefit to that. But to use it as a transaction card and pay it off at the end of each month. One of the examples, or the only example that I use, is the new Apple Card. And I got to tell you, this is a genius. To me, it's not a credit card; it's a transaction card. However, I did say something wrong. I was wrong about something in the first half of the program. I realized before we started up the second half, is that I said that you couldn't hold a balance on the Apple Card. You can hold a balance. You just can't do a balance transfer. So that is something that I compared it to American Express in the old days when you couldn't hold a balance. That was incorrect. You can hold a balance to it. But the Apple Card, the first thing that's genius about the branding of Apple is that it's all about the Apple name, and it's an Apple Card, not an Apple credit card. And I think that holds true to its form, because although they are a credit card, they're not pulling some of the same tricks that your typical credit card does pull in the industry, in marketing, and to get you sucked in. And one of the things that I talk about is the way that you get the 3% cash back on a daily basis, or a 2% or a 1%, which really is not that much difference between other credit cards on their reward programs. But this one has a daily function to it. So that has some pretty cool things. You can only imagine what the Apple app looks like. Their apps are tremendous. And the card itself, very sleek, very modern looking credit card. Transaction card is the way I would call it. And that's what we got to do. We got to look at this from a transaction standpoint, the benefits of using a credit card over a debit card, and get our financial lives back into control, and make sure that we know that we can accomplish our goals that we set down the road. Having said that, if you need a financial planner, if you need someone to give advice to you, advice is always free and there's no cost. And I would love to talk to you about becoming your financial advisor, and you becoming a client. We can do that just by talking on the phone, and let me get an idea of what your situation is. And that's just send us an email at info@prudentmoney.com. Yes, I would jump all over this Apple Card. Once again, we can't promote anything on a nonprofit radio, but I can during a podcast. And I would, like I said, this is something I would highly recommend as a transaction card only. So go check it out. I think that you'll like the podcast. If you have any questions, info@prudentmoney.com or bob@prudentmoney.com. And I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, is it time to rethink credit cards? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, on the program, we've been talking about over the past week or so about thinking about credit cards a little differently, because we're at a point to where the average interest rate on a credit card is between 20 and 24%, depends on who you follow, who you believe, and methodologies. But it's hovering, though, the record average of all time at 20 to 24%, which is just unbelievable. I mean, at the point that it got into around 15%, it was starting to become unbearable. I think anything 20 and over is unbelievably unbearable. And it's a trap that you do not want to fall into. So whereas, with people will take an opportunity to do a balance transfer, and they'll move the money from a 10 or 11% interest rate to a card that's got zero interest rate for 21 months. People used to do that, and consumers used to do that all of the time through the years. Is that something that is worth doing? And I would suggest probably not, unless you've got an ironclad plan to be out of debt by the time that 0% runs out, because of the interest rate factors. We've been talking about this, and glad to be having this conversation, because I want to make sure everybody is on the same page as to why you need to think differently about credit cards, which we're going to address today, and you need to be careful with them. As an example, I had a listener write in saying that he was going to use a particular card, and he was going to transfer over his credit balance, which he was paying 9% interest on, to a new credit card that could be as high as 29%. Because you see, what ends up happening at some point on these new cards, generally speaking, it's after the free time that you don't pay interest, the 21 months, the 18 months, whatever it might be, they assess your credit based on whatever they want to base it on. I mean, it's their credit assessment, and you're looking at somewhere between 19-20% and 29%. So if life happens, something messes up, you don't have the ability to pay off that balance at this point, you've really got problems, because now you went from a 9% interest rate on that balance to now, who knows what it could be, 25, 26. And my guess is that they are monitoring this for what the sweet spot is as far as the interest rate on credit card debt, and they're managing it in a big way, because it's big money. So I don't know that I buy into it's an accurate reflection of your credit and your credit score, but we'll see. Call me a skeptic, but we'll see. So every once in a while, and I think to illustrate my point of we need to rethink credit cards, I want to use, and then this is by no way an endorsement, a recommendation, nothing like that. It's just that this particular card is a good fit for my idea. You could use any kind of card for it. And once again, not a recommendation. We're on nonprofit radio. I'm not here to endorse something or evaluate something based on recommending you change to it. Okay, so let's just make that real clear, straight up. I want to keep everybody happy. and follow the rules. So Apple Card could be one of the most ingenious corporate marketing efforts that I have ever seen. I know that's a big statement. They rolled out Apple Card. It's not a credit card, it's Apple Card. And I love, Apple is so good at branding Apple and branding their products. And the way that this works is, or the headline to get your attention is 3% cash back. Well, it's not so much 3% cash back as it is 3% on any purchase you buy with Apple or you buy through certain apps, which is very limited, and their partners, which the last time I saw the list, it was like 5 to 6 partners. So we're not talking a big listing of restaurants, companies, Amazon or anything like that. We're talking pretty limited 3% cash back type situation. If you use Apple Pay, I think you get 2% cash back, and then on all other transactions you get 1% cash back. Really, when you look at it from that standpoint, it's no different than any other card. Most cards have ways to get higher cash back or get, like American Express gives you points. A lot of cards give you points, and you can use it to buy things, or you can use it, which I like. What I feel is the best use of points is travel points, airline tickets, and whatnot. It's a great way to pay for them through the points that you've accumulated. But this Apple Card, and once again, I like the fact that they call it an Apple Card and not a credit card, because it is different from a credit card. It's all about, of course, they've got a top. I haven't seen it. I can only imagine. So to be candid, to be upfront, I can only imagine what the app looks like. I'm sure that it is pretty spectacular. And of course, the sleek design of the Apple Card makes it look like no other card that you've ever seen. The cash back feature on this card, though, is really interesting because to me, it promotes financial responsibility. And that's one of the things that to me is very unique about this card. They're not trying to trick you and play games. What you see is what you get. And you have a choice. I'm sure you can access this and set it up through the app. But you have a choice as to when you get your daily cash rewards, not sometime in the future, but literally if you spent $100 and you got $3 back, that $3 would show up on your app, I'm assuming, and it would either go one of two places. It would either go to pay for future purchases, kind of like a small bank account, or it would go into a savings account through Goldman Sachs. And with all the money flowing into savings accounts away from banks, I think this is brilliant. In fact, I even would suggest that having the ability to put money into a money market held by Goldman Sachs, which means they should be paying higher rates, that this could bring even more competition to the big banks right now. The big banks are struggling to hold on to cash. People are moving it because they can get paid so much higher interest rates than what the banks are paying. So Apple, if you can just imagine their following, and really their marketing of this Apple Card has not been too good. I haven't seen as much advertising and that kind of thing. But if they were to put the advertising into full force, I would think with their following, their branding, and just the people who own Apple products. I mean, you're reaching so, I couldn't even tell you what the number is. A good part of the population, let's put it to you that way, and that's using this concept. So what I think, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, is rethink the credit card. And what I mean by that is it's how we approach the use of credit cards. Now, I'm going to go through the fine print with you and let you make sure that you know that, so you can see that, because I think it's always good to look at what they're not telling you in the marketing. But it's changing our thoughts from holding balances on credit cards to a transaction card. The only thing that you use that card for is to charge daily, weekly type expenses and pay them off immediately when you get the bill. That's what it's for. It's a transaction card. It's like your debit. You don't use your debit to hold to hold a credit balance. You use it as a transaction card. Well, this Apple card could be used easily as a transaction-based card, plus you have the ability to save money and you have the ability to put money back for future purchases. Pretty cool type feature. Probably the best thing about the Apple Card, and this used to be American Express was this way, is that you didn't have the choice to hold a balance. You had to pay it off. American Express used to be that way. Now they've kind of gotten sucked into away from the transaction game and into the credit game as well. To my knowledge, Apple Card does not allow for balance transfers, and I think that is a good thing, because you got to pay it off at the end of each month, and I think that's somewhat of a habit that you have to work on and have to develop. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Listen, we're up against a break. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by K. Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org.
Do you find yourself overwhelmed after watching the news? Sing more songs. A lot of our anxiety comes from the fact that we look at our God as being too small. Not that we're not tempted to do that, but we need to sing more psalms. Please join us 5 a.m., 1 p.m. Saturday, and 7 a.m. Sunday to hear Jason Wallace give expository teaching of the Bible.
Alistair Begg continues our study in the book of Ephesians this week. We'll see the role of the church in God's plan and find out how to determine if you're called to preach. Then find out how to make sense of life and the world around you. Listen to Truth for Life with Alistair Begg.
Weekdays at 5:30 a.m. here on 91.3 KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Hey, if you haven't checked out the podcast, make sure you go to prudentmoney.com or wherever you listen to or consume your podcasts. And we're there. And so make sure that you sign up to follow and do all the things you do with podcasts. And we do podcast every program. And so if you miss something during the week, you can listen at your own leisure. So that's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. And also make sure you sign up for the Prudent Money e-letter. That is the way that we do keep you posted. And every Friday, Alyssa sends out a listing of, hey, these were our podcasts or our radio shows for the week, and did any of them appeal to you, that you might want to listen to? So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that every show radio show that I produce is going to be for everybody. So you can pick and choose, manage your time a little bit better. But that comes out every Friday, and you'll be in the know if you go ahead and sign up for the Prudent Money e-letter list. Every time we put something brand new on the website, and if we have any special deals from our sponsors. So that's all at the website, prudentmoney.com. We were talking about the fact that we've got to rethink credit cards, because how we've treated them, how we've used them for a loan, all of that has got to change, because the interest rates are now beyond way where they should be. The average interest rate on balances is somewhere between 20 and 24%, depends on who you listen to. So not good. I would suggest that we take and we change our buying habits and change the way we use the credit card to a transaction card, to where that's all you're doing is you're using the card as a transaction vehicle and you're paying it off at the end of every month. You can do that with any credit card that you have without a balance. That's what's critical. You want to have it clean, no balances. And so it might be worth it to get a new card just for that. Not suggesting you do, and you got to check out the credit impact and all those good things before you do it. But if you want to switch to this idea of changing things to a transaction-based method, and not every once in a while maybe not paying off the balance or building a balance. You don't want to do that. You just want to make this a transaction game. So we talked about that is really what the Apple Card, not a credit card, but the Apple Card is set to do. As I said at the beginning of the program, I'm only using this as an example, not recommending it, not endorsing it, not telling you to go buy it, nothing like that. We are on nonprofit radio, and that is not the purpose. The purpose is to illustrate and not promote. So I want to make sure that's clear. So the best place, as you know, is to look at, to find what the details are, what they can and they can't do, is going to be found in and I'm just reading, I thought I would pull the one for Apple Card and read it. The Apple Card customer agreement, or as in most credit cards, is the card member agreement. Unfortunately, with the games that are played by credit card companies, you don't even get a copy of that until you've already started using the credit card, so you don't really know what the damage is. You know, instead of going back and redoing this whole entire program, I do have to say that I caught something that I was wrong about this Apple Card, is that they do allow you to accumulate a balance. I don't know why I thought that they didn't, but they do. So minor mistake, but they do allow for you to do that. However, you don't have to do that. You can pay it off, and that's what I'm suggesting is what I'm calling a transaction card is simply that, is a card that you use for transaction. Now, by the way, why, and I'm going to throw the question out there, we've already really addressed this this last week, but why would it make sense to get a new credit card if you needed to do that because you want to balance free? Why wouldn't you just use your debit card? Because I believe a credit card is a superior instrument to a debit card because of two big reasons, and I'll go over them real quick. The first one is theft. If someone got a hold of your information, would you rather them take money out of your bank account, or would you rather them charge money against your credit limit? I would personally vote for the credit limit because you can get that taken care of and erased immediately. the bank, I don't think you want anybody in there stealing money from your bank. The second thing is a debit card does nothing for you from a credit activity standpoint in improving your credit score, whereas a credit card is positive, if you use it that way, is positive credit activity month in, month out. You charge something, you pay it off, and that can only do wonders for you from the standpoint of building your credit. So if you were to carry a balance on this Apple Card, you're looking at 15.99% to 26.99%. The fact that they start at 15.99%, which is roughly 4% lower than most of the big banks are charging get this now, for good credit, is that they actually do treat this right. And that's what I would expect from a company like Apple, is to not do this like every other credit card is doing it. There is no fees, no annual fees, no transaction fees, no penalty fees, no other fees. However, having said that, there's this one little stipulation that just that to me that troubles me from the standpoint of credit card companies, and it says we may change any term of this agreement or add new provisions at any time in our sole discretion. So there you have it. Probably the worst consumer contract we could sign is for a credit card, because we give them that power. They also, it says we may increase or decrease your credit limit at any time for any reason. We may decline transactions for any reason, including suspected or actual fraud, violation of applicable law, your default under this agreement, or if you exceed your credit limit. They can decline transactions. Now they go through, what's interesting, they go through this difference between co-owned account and participant eligibility and a participant based account. So in other words, I'll give you a good example of this, is that if you have a credit card and you want your teenage son or daughter to have a way to get gas, then you put them on the card as a participant, and in most cases they are getting the good positive credit activity that you are, or they're getting the bad credit activity that you are. It goes both ways. It's always good to check with the credit card company and make sure that how that stands as far as the transfer of credit history and all that kind of thing. But it can be a good thing. The co-owner is just the way it sounds. You are on there as a legal responsible person for the debt that's on the card. It says, what triggers a default? The account will be in default to this agreement if you fail to pay any minimum payment due on or before the applicable payment due date. Now, they basically can default your card for hardly any reason at all. And I would think, we've all had credit cards. We've all been a day late. Maybe you never have been. I've been a day late before. And they can actually close down your credit card. Returned unpaid or cannot be processed. You breach any terms of this agreement. You file or become the subject of a bankruptcy, which makes sense. You give us any false, incomplete, or misleading information. What if you upped your salary a little bit more than you normally make? They could take action if they found out. Of course, some of this is pretty far-fetched. You become legally incapacitated. I do know, having looked at credit agreements, that most credit agreements are not this. This isn't too bad compared to what is out there. But as I said, I think that rethinking your use of a credit card is one of the best financial decisions that you can make, because we really have, as a nation, as a community of consumers, need to get to a spot where we are not racking up additional debt, because the cost is just way overboard at this point. Greater than 20%. It's going to take most people a long time to get out of debt. This is Bob Brooks. If you've got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.